Two offer letters, same week. One says Goldman, one says JPMorgan. Same $85,000 salary, same signing bonus. You take one. A kid you knew takes the other. Two analysts. 3 years later, one $2 billion deal drops you both on the same night. You think this is a fight. Goldman versus JPMorgan. Winner takes the deal. By the last page, you learn what winning is really worth. The fee on this deal is $22 million. Your cut is $40,000. If the deal dies, both numbers go to zero. One question runs under all 6 weeks. Who actually wins when it closes? You find the answer on the last night. Level 1. The mandate. A company is for sale. It makes something boring, valves or software or insurance, something that prints cash and never trends. A private equity firm wants to buy it. Take it private, off the market, out of the light. The seller needs a bank. So does the buyer. The seller is not a spreadsheet. He is a person. He built this company over most of his life. Now he is tired or sick or simply done. He wants out with the most money he can carry. The buyer is a fund. It buys companies for a living. It will hold this one a few years, cut what it can, grow what it can, then sell it again to someone bigger. Nobody in this story is evil. Everybody just wants their number. Goldman pitches the seller. That is you. You spend the night building the pitch book. 60 pages. Every page says one thing. We will get you the highest price. You do not sleep. You order the same dinner off the same app. It arrives cold. You eat it standing up. Across the river, JPMorgan pitches the buyer. That is Daniel. Same night, same cold dinner. He builds a different book. His says one thing too. We will hand you the money to buy it. You both win. Of course you both win. That was never the question. But here is the part that makes no sense yet. The bank does not chase this deal only for the fee. It chases it for the ranking. There is a scoreboard in this business. They call it the league table. Every bank ranked by how many billions it moved this year. Goldman wants to sit at the top. So does JPMorgan. A $2 billion deal is not just $22 million. It is a line on that scoreboard. It is a number future clients read before they hire you. So you are not fighting for money tonight. You are fighting for a rank. And the rank is what brings the next deal, and the next fee, and the next kid who does not sleep. Here is what you actually do. You are the sell side. You run the auction. You write the book that makes the company shine. At the end, you hand the seller a fairness opinion. A single page that says the price was fair. Your fee is contingent. Just over 1% of the price. $22 million. Paid only if it closes. Not a cent before. Daniel is the other kind of bank. He does not sell. He lends. His bank commits the debt that lets the buyer pay. He writes a commitment letter, a promise of $1.2 billion. His fee comes off the loan. 2 banks, 2 analysts, 1 company between you. You have never met the buyer. Daniel has never met the seller. But your 2 spreadsheets are about to spend 6 weeks fighting over the same number. You do not know yet who it is. You will. Level 2. The model war. The whole deal is one number, what the company is worth. And 2 analysts build 2 models to prove 2 different answers. Your model makes it big. The company earns $150 million a year. That is the raw number. Your job is to make it look bigger and cleaner. So you add things back. A lawsuit that will not repeat. A bad year that was not their fault. A cost a new owner would cut anyway. Each add back lifts the earnings. Each lift raises the price. You are not lying. You are framing. There is a door between the 2. You learn exactly where it sits. You land on a price. 13 times earnings. About $2 billion. Your book swears every dollar is real. Daniel builds the opposite. He is the buyer's side. He builds the buyout. The buyer does not pay $2 billion in cash. Nobody does. The buyer puts in $800 million of its own. It borrows the other $1.2 billion. And Daniel's model asks one cold question. Can the company carry that debt? Do the math with him. $1.2 billion of debt. Interest near 10%. That is $120 million a year just to hold the loan. The company earns $150. Almost all of it now goes to the bank. One bad quarter and it does not go far enough. And here's why the buyer still wants it. Pay $2 billion. Put in only $800 million of real cash. Let the company pay down the loan with its own earnings for 5 years. Then sell it again for $3 billion. Clear the rest of the loan. More than $1.8 billion comes back. The $800 million has more than doubled. The math only works because of the debt. The debt is the whole trick. That is what a buyout is. You buy a house with someone else's mortgage and the tenant pays it off. So Daniel's model wants the price lower. Your model wants it higher. Same company, same night. 2 kids barely out of school, 2 screens, shoving the same number in opposite directions. Here's the strange thing about Daniel. He is you. Same school, same dorm hallway, same bad coffee for 4 years. You studied for the same exams. You sat the same 2 interviews. He got the letter that said JPMorgan. You got the one that said Goldman. That is the whole difference between you. One envelope. And now the envelope has you aiming at each other over a company neither of you had heard of a month ago. You get the signed letter of intent at 2 a.m. The deal is real now. You thought this moment would feel like something. It does not. You save the file. You open the next one. The feeling you were promised never shows up. You just get more work. You send the buyer the data room, everything about the company, and you have just handed Daniel the knife. Level 3. The diligence. Diligence is the strip search. The buyer gets to look at everything, contracts, payroll, every single customer. Daniel's team runs the numbers again, line by line. They call it quality of earnings. It means one thing. Are the earnings real or did Goldman dress them up? They find it. Of course they find it. There is always something. You watch it happen from your side of the data room. A folder opens, then another. You can see which files they are reading. Late one night, they stop on a single folder and stay there. Your stomach drops before you even know why. One customer is 30% of the revenue. Almost a third of the whole company sits on one signature, and that contract renews in 8 months. If that customer walks, the earnings you polished so hard fall straight through the floor. Daniel writes it up. His side sends the memo. The price is wrong, they say. The risk is real. They want money off. Now you defend the number you built. You dig. You find the customer has been there 11 years. Renewed 3 times, never once late. So you build a new page. You argue the concentration is loyalty, not risk. You believe about half of it. This is the part nobody warns you about. You are a few years out of school. You are arguing over $200 million at 3 a.m. with another kid across the river, and the men whose names are on the buildings are asleep. You send your rebuttal. Daniel reads it at his desk. He knows it is half spin. He respects it anyway. He would have written the same page from your chair. The 2 sides are dug in now. Neither one blinks. And then someone outside the room opens their mouth. Level 4. The leak. The deal was a secret. Deals like this always are. Then one morning it is on a screen it should never have reached. A reporter. A single line. Company in talks to go private near $2 billion. Someone talked. You will never know who. It does not matter. The secret is gone. Everything moves at once. The stock jumps. Rival buyers wake up. Lawyers start calling. And the buyer, Daniel's client, gets something it did not have the day before. An excuse. Because now the buyer can point at the leak and the risky customer and say the world has changed. This is the moment the whole deal was quietly built to allow. The retrade. They come back with a new number. Not $2 billion. $1.8 billion. $200 million gone in a single email. The reason is dressed up in 10 paragraphs. The truth is one line. They found a reason, and they took it. You are the one who has to carry that number back to the seller. A man who built this company over decades, who now has to hear it is worth $200 million less than he was told on Tuesday. You make the call. You keep your voice flat. Inside, something you cannot name pulls tight. He's quiet on the phone for a long time. Then he asks if he did something wrong. He did not. Nobody did. The number just moved, the way numbers move when the people who own them get scared. You tell him it is still a good deal. It is. That does not make the call any easier. Daniel does not celebrate. He is not the buyer. He is only the machine that made the buyer strong enough to push. He runs the debt again at 1.8. It works a little better there. That is all it is to him. A model that finally balances. One number is left. The last one. And both of you will be awake when it lands. Level 5. The final bid. The last night does not look like a movie. No shouting, no fists on the table. It is 2 conference rooms, 2 speakerphones, and a dozen tired people saying numbers in careful voices. The seller wants 1.9. The buyer offers 1.85. They crawl at each other 10 million at a time. $10 million slid across a table like a checker by people too worn out to feel the weight of it. Your job tonight is the fairness opinion. 1 page. It says the final price is fair to the people selling. Your bank will not sign it until the number is right. So you sit, and you wait, and you rerun the model every time a digit moves. Daniel's job tonight is the commitment letter. 1 page. It says his bank will actually wire the $1.2 billion in debt. Without his page, there is no money. Without your page, there is no blessing. 2 single pages, 2 analysts. The whole $2 billion waits on both. They settle at $1.9 billion. It is nearly 4 a.m. Someone says we have a deal, in a voice with nothing left in it. You hit send on the fairness opinion. Across the river, Daniel hits send on the commitment letter, the same minute. You do not know he is there. He does not know you are. You should feel like you won. You are too empty to feel anything. You order the same food off the same app. You take the same cab home at the same gray hour. Somewhere on another bridge, so does he. You will do this again. Next month, another deal, another seller, another fund, another Daniel on the far side of another river. The names change. The night does not. You are learning that the deal is never really the point. The next deal is the point. There is always a next deal. That is the whole machine, and you just became a moving part. The deal is done, and soon they will hand you a small block of glass to prove it. Level 6. The Tombstone. The deal closes weeks later. Money moves. $1.9 billion leaves one set of accounts and lands in another. The seller is rich and quiet. The buyer owns a company and $1.2 billion of debt. Goldman's $22 million fee lands. JPMorgan's financing fee lands. Everyone above you gets paid. Then a package arrives on your desk, a small block of clear glass, a tombstone, they call it. The deal frozen inside the lucite, the company name, the price, the date, and 2 logos at the bottom. Goldman on one side, JPMorgan on the other. Side by side on the same little slab, the 2 enemies, cast in the same glass forever. You set it on your shelf. You wait for it to mean something. It is heavier than you expected and lighter than you hoped. Across the river, the same package lands on Daniel's desk. Same glass, same logos, same shelf. Your bonus comes later, $40,000, for 6 weeks that ended most nights at 4 a.m. So run the math the way you ran everyone else's. $22 million walked in the door on your work. 40,000 reached you. That is under 0.2%. You built the number. You touched almost none of it. Your whole bonus is a rounding error inside a rounding error. The seller got $1.9 billion. The buyer got a company. The owners got their cut of both. You got a block of glass and a story you cannot tell at parties. You won the deal. Goldman was the advisor of record. Your name is nowhere on the tombstone, but the logo is. So for one day you believe that means something. Then you look at the glass again. 2 banks, 1 slab, and a small question opens that you cannot close. Who actually owned both sides? So you look it up. It is public. Anyone can see it. You just never did. Who owns Goldman? The biggest shareholders are not people. They are funds. Vanguard, BlackRock. And who owns JPMorgan? The same funds. Vanguard, BlackRock. The same names, sitting at the top of both banks. Sit with that a second. Goldman collected $22 million to sell the company. JPMorgan collected its fee to fund the buyer. 2 banks, 2 enemies, 1 tombstone. And behind both logos, the same handful of owners, quietly collecting from both sides of the same deal. You and Daniel were never opponents. You were 2 hands on one body, 1 hand sold, 1 hand paid. and the same owner charged the room for the privilege of watching its own left hand shake its right. The two offer letters were identical for a reason. Same salary, same bonus, same week. Because the outcome was always identical. It was never Goldman against JPMorgan. It was the machine, hiring both ends of itself and letting two kids believe they were at war. The Tombstone has two names on it. It only ever had one owner. Somewhere right now, two graduates are opening two envelopes. One says Goldman, one says JPMorgan. The same number sits inside each. They think they just picked opposite sides. They are about to spend a decade proving they never did. They do not know that yet. The glass is already being poured. You keep the Tombstone on your shelf, not because you won, because it is the one honest object in the whole story. Two names, one slab. It never pretended to be anything else. You were just too tired to read it. You went to war for the number. The number went home to the people who own the war. If you want the deal that finally breaks the analyst who built it, watch your life as a boutique M&A banker. The one deal that never lets go.